Hey there friends and enemies, JoPa here again, and today I want to showcase my current favorite Stasis Titan build for the new Onslaught game mode in Destiny 2, and I am absolutely loving this one. It utilizes one of the more underrated exotic weapons in the game, in my personal opinion. It is great for survivability for a couple different reasons, and also is really able to control a lot of areas very well, meaning that you're not having to worry about enemies coming from multiple angles at any given time. You can block entire hallways and it just works out phenomenally, and I love it. Plus, it's nice because you can be a little bit more aggressive if you want to with this build, or you can play a little bit more passive. Either way, and you can still have success, which I think is very important. I was able to clear level 50 of the Onslaught game mode with randoms, which is one of my litmus tests for using my builds, because randoms, you can't communicate with them. They sometimes struggle to stay alive at certain points in the activity, and you just don't know what you're going to get with their damage output as well. So it's always nice when you run it a few times, and as you get towards the later stages, you really see how well your build is performing. But anyway, let me just jump right into it. First off, I am using the Hoarfrost Z exotic chest armor. This one is fantastic. Replace barricade with a wall of stasis crystals. Stasis crystals are going to be a main focus of this build, which is why I'm using the Verglass curve. I know a lot of people are in love with the Salvation's Grip after it got buffed and reworked a bit, but for me, Verglass is a bit more versatile for this build specifically, and you get stasis crystals generated all the time. It is fantastic, and it really is able to block off hallways and keep enemies away from you at all times. Then you've also got the Royal Executioner. I like this one. I've crafted it with Envious Assassin and Reservoir Burst, meaning that I'm gonna have a ton of ammo that can generate those Reservoir Burst strikes. So I think this one works out very, very well for this build. And then finally, I am also running the Reed's Regret. You can rock whatever linear fusion you want. I find either a machine gun or linear fusion to be really helpful for the tormentors in this mode, but also for the bosses if you're sitting back a little bit farther and they're smaller and they move around. Sometimes rockets or grenade launchers can be a bit more difficult to hit. Now moving on to the actual subclass, you've got your standard preset abilities. I am running Rally Barricade, High Lift, Shiver Strike, and then Glacier Grenade. More stasis crystals the better. The aspects, I'm running Tectonic Harvest, so shattering a stasis crystal creates a shard. These shards are very important for the build as well. And then I'm running Diamond Lance. I'm mostly running this for the 3 fragments slots, but also having the Diamond Lance also is very nice if you are playing a bit more aggressive. As far as the fragments, I am running the Whisper of Fissures, Refraction, Rime, Chains, as well as Rending. This is going to ensure that I have an overshield pretty much at all times. I'm going to do increased damage to frozen targets, a bunch of stuff like that that really leans into the fact that I'm generating as many crystals as possible and also destroying them, and then that also synergizes with 2 of the artifact perks that I'm running as well. Hail the Storm, shattering frozen targets and stasis crystals deals increased damage. Shattering stasis crystals releases shards of ice that damage and so targets. This is phenomenal. So for this season, it's going to be great. And then Pillar of Ice, defeating a frozen target spawns stasis crystals. Again, you want as many crystals as possible. As far as my mods, Heavy Ammo Finder, Stasis Targeting, Stasis Siphon, Focusing Strike ×2, and then Stasis Loader. We got Solar Reserves, Stasis Reserves, and then Stasis Resistance. Then we've got Better Already and Double Stasis Surge, and then Distribution, Outreach, and Time Dilation. As far as why I enjoy this particular build, I know there's other Stasis builds that perform well in this activity as well, but for me, being able to control the areas, the battlefield, is so important in this mode. Too often you're paying attention to one lane and then enemies slip behind you, whether they're going invisible, whether they are able to teleport past you. Sometimes that does happen, especially with overload champions, and it can be immensely frustrating. If you are blocking off areas and also able to pop your barricade, which is a bunch of stasis crystals, destroy them, freeze targets, it slows them down tremendously, but also you don't have to be as precise if you're looking for an invisible target. Your stasis crystal damage will hit them and slow them as well, which is phenomenal. So overall, I do enjoy this build quite a bit. Again, if you want to jump in the mix of the enemies, if your other teammates are being a little bit more passive, you can do so. Pop your barricade where they are spawning and really farm them as much as you want at times. The only real major problems you have to worry about and look out for are going to be your tormentors and also your giant brigs. Those are going to be a little bit more difficult, especially with a linear fusion. You definitely have to go break their shields so that way you can get the weak spot. Tormentors are going to be a little bit more frustrating regardless, but what I would recommend, try to clear as many of the ads around the tormentor as possible and also lure it away from the zone. So if you know that it's targeting you, don't sit on the ADU because it's going to dive at you and then do damage to the objective. Instead, as soon as you see it starting to approach you, try to be off to the side. Also, tormentors are easily distracted by the decoys. So if you have a bunch of decoys, that can be very helpful. I know most everybody wants to buy the turrets, but for me, the decoys are more helpful in the later stages because they can keep the attention of the enemies for long enough for you to do enough damage and take them down. As far as the boss rooms go, you're going to want to find a good spot. I always toss one of my stasis grenades right in the mix of a bunch of enemies, and then also will pop my barricade so that way if I get pushed by anything, I can shoot those crystals and do some damage and also generate the stasis shards so that way I can get that overshield and stay alive. So I do think that is very important to keep in mind. Again, your primary damage is going to be with your linear fusion, but also your fusion rifle does really good damage in a pinch as well. It's not going to be as nice as something like a Cartesian or some other high DPS fusion. So if you want to swap that out, you definitely can, because ad clear is going to be pretty easy even if you don't have the reservoir burst on. But for me personally, it just is way more fun this way, and also really is enjoyable when you see those big explosions because you take down multiple enemies at any given time. Otherwise, I've been loving this activity. I think it's a very fun addition to Destiny 2, and it's one that I'm going to keep making builds for because I do want to share one for every subclass, because I think while there is a meta shaping up, it is fun to mix and match. And if you have a favorite that maybe isn't the meta, I want to talk about builds. So as always, a dim link will be in the description, actually the first pinned comment down below. Definitely check that out if you do use dim. I also will be working on an Arc Warlock next. That is my build coming forward. But if there are any builds that you think are underrated, any exotics that you think are underrated that you want to see me build around, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I am always looking for new fun things to try that might be outside of what everybody else is using. I also have some other options for builds that I have in mind, but again, I love to hear from the community and see what everyone else is cooking up. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously, shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content from me going forward. My name is Jopa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.